Now I'd like to show you some frames that should be culled, or in other words, taken out of the operation completely. And I'll show you some other frames that might give you pause. You might wonder what to do with them, whether they should be trashed or kept. Quite a few might look mysterious, but are actually fine. And I'll explain what to do with those in order to keep them. Here we see some fresh pollen. Most of it looks dry, and here's some that is mostly older. It's the shiny stuff I'm pointing out to you. Don't worry about shiny pollen of any color. It's pollen that has begun to ferment, which is a good thing for the bees, because this slight fermentation makes the proteins in the pollen more digestible. Pollen is always put into the cells, so there's a little bit of cell empty above it at the top, and they do not cap over pollen. This, on the other hand, is not a good look for pollen. This is entombed pollen. It's not good, and I would stop using this frame because the bees felt something was wrong with it, and they covered it over with wax, and they don't want to use this pollen. So that's enough about pollen. We're going to get into some comb issues now. This frame here, the bees drew out just a little bit of the foundation into comb, and then they stopped. And you might think you got to scrape this off fresh for them to get working on it. Not true. Incoming carbohydrates such as syrup or nectar is going to get their wax glands going, and they'll finish off this comb. These two frames have been attached together because they were spaced too wide. What you have to do is cut out those bridges of comb and make sure the frames are tight to each other in the box. And on this one, again, it was bad spacing, and they're making free floating kind of dangling patties of combs between frames. Bridge comb and floating comb patties can be prevented by keeping frames tight. Don't leave air gaps. And scrape off any propolis that's filling the gaps, like here. Squeeze frames together. And on the places where it's actually just 90 degrees, here's what I would suggest. Sometimes the bees build comb like this at a 90-degree angle to the way they should. So instead of scraping it all off, I recommend that you squish it down, sort of plaster it along like peanut butter. And then they have an extra thick layer of wax to start again. This comb has 3 bumps on it in an area where bees deepened the cells to contain nectar. When it's cold and the comb is fragile, it's a good time to shave these off. Shave it flat and just shave your hive tool back and forth like this, and then the comb won't touch the next frame when you insert it into a hive. Now let's look at some sad situations and learn what to do there. This is starvation, and lots of bees in the central area are in their cells dead. Mold doesn't kill bees. Rather, it grows on the bees after they have died. You should clean off as much as you can by brushing and give this frame to a new colony of bees. Bees can handle a surprising amount of mold. And I wouldn't give one colony a lot of that kind of frame to clean up. I would scatter those moldy frames amongst strong colonies for cleanup. This frame here has a weird look to it, though up at the top you see some capped honey. Most of the frame has kind of granules of wet white stuff. Now don't worry, that's just crystallized honey. And the bees will like to get that. They can nibble it out of the cells, and it'll be a great boost for bees in the spring to get this sort of frame. Comb has a shelf life, so to speak, and beeswax has been called the liver of the hive because it takes in and holds on to toxins, such as chemicals in the environment and also pesticides. Comb color is an easy way to gauge comb age. Comb that's this dark is probably over 5 years old and it should be replaced. Here's the start of some frames that I'm going to show you that just are not good. This is what it looks like if you have laying workers or possibly a drone laying queen. And this is what it looks like from the side. And in the future, if you use this frame, you're going to wonder if the queen is a problem queen. Just because she's working on a frame that a previous colony made into a bad drone frame like this, you don't want to mistake every future queen that uses this frame for a bad queen. So better get rid of this frame. I want to contrast that with this, which is what drone cells should look like. Down at the edge of the frame or out to the edges of the brood nest in drone regions. On this frame, the plastic foundation wasn't seated in the groove well. It was warped. All the cells are too shallow or not drawn out at all, and on the other side, the cells will be extra deep, and the queen's not going to lay in those cells, so I would get rid of this frame. This is not just a culling the frame situation. This is a diagnosis of disease here, and the disease is American foul brood. These dark things that we're pointing out here are the melted down corpses of bees, and you'll see the dark item at the bottom of the cells, the bottom meaning the side of the cell that's closer to the ground when the frame is held in its normal position. Because as the developing bee dissolved, due to the bacterial infection, it settled to the bottom. These scales, as they're called, are a classic sign of American foul brood. So if this was not simply an irradiated frame that we were given by our state inspector to use for education like this, if this was found in a live hive, the whole hive would have to be burned. Bees, combs, frames, boxes, everything. Let's look at some bees making some beautiful new comb to finish this off. So always be on the lookout for American foul brood, other signs of disease, and low quality frames in general. I hope that this video has helped you to differentiate between big problems like American foul brood and many other problems that might seem mysterious, but they're actually okay.